there's people that have lived through something that can comment in a very specific way. Like, for example, Holocaust survivors.
Yes.
There is a sense in which maybe a basic sense of civility when a Holocaust survivor is speaking about their experience of the Holocaust than an intellectual from a very different part of the world that's simply writing about nuanced geopolitics of World War II just should not interrupt the Holocaust survivor.
We physically interrupt them if they're telling their
with
story.
Words, with logic and reason, that the experience of the Holocaust survivor somehow fundamentally has a deeper understanding of the humanity and the injustice of the...
Well, first of all, again, we're in even deeper waters now, but in terms of wanting to listen to another person who has experienced something, yes, but not endlessly. Not endlessly. I mean, there are some people who've written about there are people who've written about the Holocaust who didn't experience the Holocaust and have written about it better than people who did. It's not this idea that the lived experience, to use this terrible modern jargon, as if there's another type. This idea that the lived experience has to triumph over everything else is not always correct. It can be correct in some circumstances. If you are sitting in a room with a Holocaust survivor and somebody who'd never heard about the Holocaust and wanted to kind of, shoot out their views on it, yeah, one of those people should be heard more than the other, obviously. If there's somebody who's experienced racism firsthand and there's somebody else who has never experienced it, then obviously you'd want to hear from the person who has experienced it firsthand, if that is the discussion underway. I don't think that it's the case that is endlessly the case. I'm also highly reluctant to concede that there are groups of people who, by dint of their skin color or anything else, get to dominate the microphone. Now, of course, we're literally both speaking into microphones at the moment, so there's an irony to this, but let's skate over the irony. What I mean is people saying, you don't have the right to speak. I have the right to take the microphone from you and speak because I know best. Fine. If you know best, we'll argue it out and someone will win, long or short term. But the almost aggressive tone in which this is now leveled, I don't like the sound of. Nobody's experience is completely understandable by another human being. Nobody's. And what many people are asking us to do at the moment, us collectively, is to fall for that thing. I think it was Camille Faster who said it first, but I've adopted it in recent years, is to say you must spend an inordinate amount of your life trying to understand me personally, my lived experience, everything about me. You should dedicate your life to trying to do that. Simultaneously, you'll never understand me. This is not an attractive invitation. This is an unwinnable game. So if somebody has a legitimate and important point to make, they should make it, and they will win through whatever their characteristics, whatever their race. And by the way, there are plenty of white people who experience racism as well. There are plenty of white people who do and have done, and increasingly so, which is one of the things I write about in the War on the West. I mean, I would argue that today in America, the only group who are actually allowed to be consistently, vilely racist against are white people. If you say disgusting things about black people in America in 2022, you will be over. You will be over. If you decide to talk about people's white tears, their white female tears, their white guilt, their white privilege, their white rage, and all these other pseudo-pathologizing terms, you'll be just fine. You could be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You could lecture at Yale University, absolutely fine. And the white people have to suck that up as if that's fine because there was racism in another direction in the past. So white people can have racism as well. Does that mean that I think that I have a right, or other white people have a right, to dominate the discourse by talking about their feelings of having been victims of racism? No, not particularly, because what does that get us? It gets us into an endless cycle of competitive victimhood. Am I saying that white people who've experienced violence have experienced historically anything like the violence that was perpetrated against black people in America historically. Obviously not. But, what kind of competition do we want to enter here? And this is very, very important terrain now in America, because there's one other thing I have to throw in there, which is, how do you work out the sincerity of the claim? How do you work out the sincerity of the claim being made? At one point in my book, in this latest book, I referred to this very useful bit in Nietzsche and the Genealogy of Morals, where, as you know, Nietzsche always has to be treated carefully. When people say, I love Nietzsche, you have to say, which bits? What exactly do you love about him? But he, and a lot can be learned from the answer. But there are moments in Genealogy of Morals that were very useful for this book. One of them was the moment when Nietzsche uses a phrase that I've now stolen for myself, appropriated, you might say, where he refers to people who tear at wounds long since closed and then cry about the pain they feel. Now, how do you know? How do you know whether the pain is real? How do you know? I'm not saying you can never know, but it's hard. So when somebody says, I feel that my life hasn't gone that well and it's because of something that was done to my ancestors 200 years ago, maybe they do feel that. Maybe they're right to feel that. Maybe they're making it up. Maybe they're using it as their reason for failure in life. Maybe they're using it as their reason to not even try. Maybe they're using it as their reason to smoke weed all day. I don't know. And who does know? How can you work that out? And that's why I come back to this thing of, who are we to constantly judge in this society other people who we don't know and attribute motives to them based on racial or other characteristics?